You know, some names in sports become legends. That's a given. But only a very, very few become something more, like an idea or a symbol. Ayrton Senna is absolutely one of those names. Today, we're going to get into the story of a man who lived his entire life at the absolute limit, and whose death completely changed his sport forever. So, picture this. The place is Imola, Italy. The event is the San Marino Grand Prix. It's only the third race of the 1994 Formula One season, and there's just a dark cloud gathering over the circuit, a real sense that something is fundamentally, deeply wrong.
To really understand the legacy of Ayrton Senna, you first have to understand the weekend that took his life. It was just this brutal, relentless series of events that forced Formula One to look in the mirror and confront its own mortality. The feeling of dread just kept building and building. It all started on Friday, when Senna's own protege, a young Rubens Barrichello, had this absolutely horrifying crash at 225 kilometers per hour. I mean, it was a miracle he survived. But that relief, it didn't last long. The very next day during qualifying, a rookie from Austria, Roland Ratzenberger, his front wing failed. His car just slammed into the wall at over 313 kilometers per hour. He didn't survive. And then came Sunday. On just the 7th lap, the unthinkable happened. Ayrton Senna, the greatest driver of his generation, crashed at the Tamburello corner, and the world just watched in total silence.
That weekend just shattered the sport. But it also, in a way, immortalized the man at the center of it all. So who was Ayrton Senna? And why is it that, decades later, his name still carries such an immense amount of power and emotion? Well, to answer that, we've got to look at what defined him on the racetrack. See, Senna wasn't just a driver. He was more like an artist who is obsessed with one single idea, the limit. Finding it, touching it, and, sometimes, tragically, going beyond it. This number right here tells you so much of the story. 65 pole positions. Now, in Formula One, pole position means you are the single fastest driver over one lap in qualifying. Nobody was quicker. And to put that in perspective for you, this record stood for 12 years after his death. It was just undeniable proof of his explosive, raw speed when it mattered most. And what's really fascinating is that this relentless pursuit of the edge, it was there from the very, very beginning. Back in the 1983 British F3 Championship, he was in this brutal title fight with Martin Brundle. For the final race, Senna didn't just show up and drive. No, he flew to Italy to personally watch over his engine being tested, and he came up with this clever, really aggressive trick. He used duct tape on the radiator to perfectly manage his engine's oil temperature for maximum power. This wasn't just a driver. This was a technical obsessive, a guy willing to do anything to find an edge. The search for the limit, it eventually reached this almost spiritual level. At the 1988 Monaco Grand Prix, he put his McLaren on pole an incredible 1.4 seconds ahead of his teammate, who just happened to be the legendary Alain Prost. He said later it was like an out-of-body experience, like he was watching himself from above, just driving through a tunnel. It is, without a doubt, one of the most famous laps in the history of motorsport. But here's the thing, and this is the core of the Senna story, the genius and the flaw, right next to each other. The very next day, while he was leaving the race by almost a full minute, he just lost concentration for a second and crashed into the barrier. A moment of pure transcendence, followed by a simple human mistake. That duality, that contrast, it really defined his entire career. And this complexity, this wasn't just in his driving. It was at the core of who he was. He could be a ruthless rival, a selfless hero, and a loyal friend, sometimes all at the same time. It's wild. And nowhere was this clearer than in his rivalry with Alain Prost. It was the ultimate clash of styles. You had Senna, the artist, driving on pure instinct, pure aggression. And then you had Prost, the professor, who was all about calculation, precision, and managing risk. Their fight for the top became one of the most iconic and honestly bitter rivalries in all of sports history. And that rivalry absolutely boiled over twice at Suzuka in Japan. In '89, they collide. Senna actually gets going again and wins the race, only to be disqualified on a technicality by the French-led governing body, which handed the title to Prost, a Frenchman. Senna was furious. He felt completely robbed. So 1 year later, same place. Senna's on pole but feels the officials put him on the wrong side of the track, the dirty side. He basically vowed that if Prost got ahead at the start, he wasn't making it through the first corner, and he kept his word. He took them both out and clinched his own championship in this moment of just cold, calculated revenge.
But that ruthless competitor? That wasn't the whole story, not by a long shot. His McLaren teammate, Gerhard Berger, brought out a totally different side of him. Berger was a legendary prankster. I mean, he once threw Senna's brand new carbon fiber briefcase out of a helicopter just to see if it really was indestructible. He secretly replaced Senna's passport photo with a very unflattering picture, which got Senna held by customs for 24 hours. He even filled Senna's hotel room with frogs. And Senna, he just took it all in stride. It revealed this loyal, funny friend behind that intense facade.
So here's this incredible contrast again, right? You see the ruthless rival, and you see the lighthearted friend. But as deep as humanity, the core of the man. It showed itself not in a joke, but when another driver's life was on the line. At the 1992 Belgian Grand Prix, a driver named Eric Comas crashed hard. He was knocked unconscious, but his foot was still jammed on the accelerator. The engine was just screaming, ready to blow. Senna was the first driver on the scene, and he didn't even hesitate. He slammed on his brakes, abandoned his own car in the middle of the track, and sprinted across the live circuit as other cars were flying past at full speed. He got to Comas, killed the engine, and held his head still until the medics got there. Comas says to this day that Senna saved his life. This is the complex, incredible man that we lost at Imola. But in this tragic, unbelievable irony, his death, which was a result of pushing the limits of safety, became the single biggest reason Formula One became safer than it had ever been. The reaction to that weekend was immediate and profound. Innovations came one after another. Raised cockpit sides to protect the driver's head, wheel tethers to stop wheels from flying off in a crash, which is what killed Senna. The HANS device was developed, which likely would have saved Ratzenberger. And, of course, more recently, the Halo, which has already saved multiple drivers from serious injury or worse. All of these are a direct legacy of that one dark weekend. And here's the real impact. Just listen to this. For 2 full decades after Ayrton Senna's death, not a single driver was killed during a Formula One race weekend. It is, without a doubt, his single greatest legacy inside the sport. But his legacy, it stretches so much further than the racetrack. Before he died, Senna had been talking with his sister about using his immense personal fortune, we're talking around $400 million, to do something about the educational inequality in his home country of Brazil. After he passed, his family made that vision a reality. They founded the Instituto Ayrton Senna, and the impact? It's been staggering. Since 1994, its programs, which focus on training teachers and creating real educational reform, have reached over 36 million children and young people all across Brazil. And the Institute, it's tackling a massive systemic problem. School dropouts cost the Brazilian economy an estimated 35 billion reais every single year. So by focusing on quality education and keeping kids in school, Senna's legacy is creating real, measurable social and economic change for his country. So when you look back at it all, you see the whole picture. A life spent in this relentless, sometimes ruthless, search for the absolute limit. A death that tragically found that limit, but in doing so, forced a revolution that has saved countless other lives. And a legacy, built on his success, that now gives millions of children the chance to go out and find their own limits, whatever and wherever they may be.